So I want to talk a little today about the 1000S and the 1000 XP, that kind of the pros and cons, the differences between the two, which ones are better at what, in case somebody's trying to decide between, which one they want to buy. I have both of them, so I've been able to ride both of them in the same situations. It gives me a little insight and experience on how they handle and which one's better for what. So the one on the right is a 2016 1000S, and the one on the left is a XP 1000. This is a 2019 model. So but there seems to be a little misinformation, in my opinion, about what these, I'm not trying to act like I know more than the engineers that design these things, but the whole idea is that the S is designed for East Coast, so you hear that a lot. Narrow trails, woods trails. It's 60 inches wide, comes 60 inches wide. It has a wheelbase of about 79 inches. And it's supposed to be for tight woods riding, and it is. I can say it would be good for that. If you ride in a place where it's being narrow is a good thing, then this machine will probably be great for that. The problem is not everything on the East Coast. We live in Alabama, and I've ridden in Tennessee, ridden in West Virginia, and we've been down south and ridden where there's a lot of mud, and like we've been to bogs and boulders, and go on down into Florida and Louisiana and Mississippi. There's a lot of mud riding there. All the East Coast is not narrow woods, fast, riding. There's a lot of technical steep, rocky, washed out hills here where we live, and the more north you go, the more of that you see, and the more south you go, the more muddy and low and swampy it gets. And from my perspective, I'm going to tell you, for a lot of the riding, the technical we used to do a lot of mud riding. We did more mud riding when we were on four-wheelers. To me, it's more fun to mud ride. Four-wheelers. Now, I know a lot of people mud ride on these things, but and that's fine, but there's a lot of cleanup and maintenance involved in mud riding, and to me, I would much rather do that on a four-wheel. That's just my opinion on that. When we moved over to the side-by-sides, we got more into the technical type riding, and from that perspective of the rutted out, washed out trails that we see a lot of, and the steep rocky hills that we climb. And that kind of stuff, the XP is just better. The longer wheelbase, the wider stance, the better suspension. The XP just outshines this S in that kind of riding. Now, that's not to say that the S is a bad machine. I'm not knocking it in any way. It's way more capable than you might expect. I came from a Can-Am Commander 1000. To this 1000S here, and it was way above the Commander for that kind of riding. The Commander was fine, and it surprised me all the time in the things that it would do. It did great, but this machine this S has better suspension than that Commander. It's more nimble, it's lighter, and it just outperformed it on the technical stuff. Mud riding, if mud riding is your thing and you like to get out in the deep mud and play, again, I think the XP is a better platform to set up for a mud machine. Now this one the S has independent suspension where you have trailing arms on this XP, but you can, you know, there's a reason they make the high lifters out of the XP. The wider stance and the taller you get, the less tippy it'll be. So to me, it's just a better setup for mud riding. You can tell just by looking at the shocks on these two machines which one is going to have a more plush ride. You see these shocks on the S here, these Fox shocks, and you see about how big they are. And if you look at this XP here, these Walker Evans shocks, and look how much bigger and heavier these shocks are on this XP. So, and you can really tell that when you get on, you know, suspension works better the faster you go, it seems like. So when you get on a rough road, or you know, you're on a fire road or any rough road, it's just way more suspension. It's just smoother in this XP than it is on the S. Again, that's not to say that the S is bad, just saying that the XP is a better ride for that kind of stuff. Back 20 years ago, I used to ride with a group of guys and we rode sport four-wheelers. I had a Polaris Predator 500. A lot of those guys rode 400 EXs and Raptors and that kind of stuff, and that's the kind of riding we did. And we like to go find the trails that were fast, you know, the kind of loops and, you know, hills that you could get a good run at and go up real fast. That's the kind of riding we like to do. That's the kind of riding you like to do. Go really fast, see how fast you can go around a trail and that kind of stuff, you know, kicking the rear end out. And to me, that's where the S would shine. You want to keep this center of gravity low. We've got this one lifted 2 inches with little bigger tires. In my opinion, if you set that thing up, it comes with 27-inch tires. If you maybe went with a light 28-inch tire on that machine, didn't lift it, it would be a blast just to ride as fast as you could, you know, around loops in the woods somewhere, especially if you had bermed corners and that kind of stuff. That S, not that the XP wouldn't do that, but to me the S would be a lot of fun. And that's kind of how I look at it. If that's what you like to do, go fast and tight, you know, narrow trails, that S is the perfect setup for that. You can really set that machine up. I bought it first, and then of course I bought this XP. I haven't had this one very long, but for the kind of riding I like to do now, which is, like I said, the technical riding, stuff like Royal Blue and Windrock, Stony Lonesome, places like that, there's a lot of technical, rocky, steep terrain. This XP is just a better platform for that. It has 11 inches more wheelbase, which keeps the front end planted on steep hills and rocks more. Not that the S won't do it, because I have done it on the S. Done quite a bit of it, and it does, like I said, it'll surprise you at how good it performs in that. But it will pick the front tires up on hills before the XP will, which tends to make you feel a little sketchy.
You're good, you're good. Come on. Sure? Yeah, come on.
I ain't good.
Come on. Hang on. You're good. You're good.
I'll top over, man. And, you know, a little nervous sometimes, but, you know, you can get the same way in the XP if you find a steep enough hill. It's just that the XP will go over some things much more easily than this S will. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is the idea that, you know, if you live on the East Coast you need an S, and if you live on the West Coast you need a XP, I don't necessarily agree with. It just depends on what kind of riding you're going to do. I personally like both machines. I've had a blast on both machines. They're both great machines, but you know, just to kind of give you an idea, if you're, you know, I know that the rage today is all about turbos, and you know, you get the Turbo S and the X3 turbos and all this, and everybody wants more power and spend more money and all that. But these machines are very capable for riding. You can have a lot of fun on these. They're both just great for what they're designed to do, in my opinion. It works really good. Having, you know, I'm getting up and I'm not as young as I used to be, and having that extra suspension is awesome because we ride, you know, hours at a time. We don't just hang out and talk when we get there. We get in and go. And riding for hours and hours, the more suspension you have, the more comfortable you'll be. Another thing that I've seen that a lot of people talk about, I've seen on forums and stuff, people talk about, well, I sat in the S and it felt tight, didn't fit me, I felt cramped, and I sat in the XP and it just fits me better, it's just bigger. Well, it's not. I measured from the back of the seat to the front of the machine, where your back would lean against the backrest, to the front of the machine, it's about 6 feet. It's exactly the same on the S. I measured from door to door on each one, and it's about 51 inches on each one of them. The cabins on these things, or the inside, the interiors, are dimensions wise are pretty much the same. Machines are almost identical from the back of the roll cage to the very front of the machine. The dimensions are the same length, and as far as the body goes, width. Now the suspension, obviously the A-arms are bigger and wider on the XP, but as far as where you're sitting in the cockpit, there's no difference. There's no difference in the seats. They're the same seats. If you fit in one, you'll fit in the other. There'll be no difference. Now the 19 has a different dash and a different layout than they changed that in 19, but you won't feel cramped in the S. If you can fit in the XP, you'll fit in an S exactly the same way. The extra, it comes in the width. This one is 4 inches wide. The XP is 4 inches wider, and you have an extra 11 inches of wheelbase, and all of that wheelbase is behind you when you get in the XP. When you sit in it, the wheel sits further behind you, and when you go from riding in the S to riding in the XP, it feels longer. You can tell when you're sitting in this S and you're driving this S, you feel like the tire is right behind you, because it is. I mean, it is literally right behind where you're sitting. When you're sitting in the XP and driving it, when you come out of this S, you just feel that the machine is longer. You feel that tire is further behind you. Again, that is a good thing for climbing steep hills, especially climbing over rocks going up steep hills. Again, a lot of the trails in this area and around the southeast are washed out, and you have big deep ruts that you have to straddle to get up them. And the extra width helps in that. We bought this S first, and basically when we started doing this more technical riding, and the more and more we did, I started doing things to turn this S more into the XP. Put 2-inch wheel spacers on it, put bigger tires on it, just to try to make it more, you know, balanced or steady on off camber, and give you more width to straddle deep ruts and that kind of stuff. And it does, like I said, it does great. I'm not knocking it. It went everywhere I took it. But you have to work a little harder for it. Whereas this XP, with that extra wheelbase and the extra width, you put a little flatter profile tire on it, and it's just easier to straddle those ruts. It's easier to keep the front end down when you're crawling through the rocks and up hills. It just, not that the S won't do it, but the XP just does it easier. So it comes down to what kind of riding you want to do. If all you want to do is just get out there and cruise and sightsee or go fast, like I said, you want to see how fast you can make loops on trails and that kind of stuff, then the S would suit you just fine. If you're going to go around all the real steep hills and you're going to go around the really deep mud and that kind of stuff, like I said, putting some 28-inch tires on this thing to give you a little bit more ground clearance and riding around in it, it's got enough suspension that you'll be comfortable and you would enjoy it. But on the other hand, if you want to do more serious riding, to me the XP is a better setup for that. That's why I have an XP now, and I'm setting it up to do what the kind of riding we want to do. So just some insight there for anybody that's interested in maybe trying to decide between these two machines. And if you're like me and you don't need a turbo, I mean, they sound cool. Everybody likes to go more power, and everybody can see that you spend a lot more money. That's cool. Nothing wrong with that. I don't need a turbo. These machines have more power than I generally use ever when we're out riding. Both of them. I've never felt like I was lacking for power on either one of them, even with bigger tires on them. I ran 32-inch tires on this S. It's got a 2-inch lift from Super ATV on it. And with those wheel spacers, I was able to run 32-inch tires on it, and honestly, never had a problem. Now, for a while, it had Outlaw 2 mud tires on it, and I'm going to tell you, it had the 29.5-inch Outlaws on it, and you get in a deep mud hole and start trying to turn those tires, you're going to smell that belt burning. It's just, you're going to need to do some clutch work if you want to turn it into a mud machine, and you could turn into a mud machine, but you're going to have to spend money on it to get it there. To me, you could easily run 30 or 32-inch mud tires on this XP, and you may still burn a belt every now and then, but not as much as this one. But if you looking for one that's ready to go and start doing some technical riding and just maybe change the tires and wheels out and go ride, to me the XP is way more suited for that. And so I mean, these are just my opinions, and like I said, I have experience riding both of them. We've ridden them both in a lot of the same places on a lot of the same terrain, and they're great machines, both of them, and they'll either one of them will suit your needs depending on your needs. So hopefully this helps somebody if you're trying to decide which one you want. One more thing I wanted to bring up before I forget is the beds on these. Obviously you have, because this XP is longer, you see the bed is laid out. It's long and narrow. Because those bars come down off of the cage, it takes up more space in this bed back here. You have a bigger area back here, but it's not as much usable space, or not quite as much, it doesn't seem like, as the S. The S has a decent sized bed on it because it's narrow as far as depth, but across wide, it's pretty wide. I measured them. I think this one was 21 inches this way and 41 inches across the back up there, where this one was, I measured it this way, it was like 29 inches, and then this way it was like 23 from the deep parts here. So you do have a little more bed space on the S if you like to, if you're gonna haul anything more than just a cooler or whatever. And of course they make boxes and accessories for both of them that you can add more storage to both of them, but just right out of the box, from the dealer, you do get a little more bed space out of the S. Again, if you just like to cruise and you want to save a little money and you're just buying one to go out there and see the sights and cruise around, the S is a great way to do that, in my opinion. To me, you can save a little money over the XP. Another thing I want to bring up is the aftermarket. You can find pretty much anything you're looking for the XP. It's been so popular for so long that the aftermarket for it is tremendous. I mean, it's a little tougher to find accessories for the S. You can find accessories, but there's some things that you just have a hard time finding for the S. Whereas with the XP, the sky's the limit. Somebody makes it, I guarantee it. You can find it out there. There's probably going to be 10 different places you can buy what you need for this XP. It's just not going to be the case with an S. It's a little harder to find that stuff. But anyway, I hope this helps somebody. And if you're trying to decide between these two machines, they're both great machines, and you know, just get the one that suits your needs the best, and I think you'd be really happy with it. And thanks for watching.